I never thought my last shift as a food delivery driver would end like this. The sodium streetlights cast an eerie orange glow across the silent suburban street as I pulled up to what would be my final delivery of the night. It was already past 11 p.m., and the app showed this was a cash order, something that had become increasingly rare these days. The house at 1247 Maple Street stood out like a sore thumb in this otherwise well-maintained neighborhood. While other homes boasted manicured lawns and fresh paint, this Victorian monstrosity loomed behind an overgrown yard, its weathered shutters hanging at awkward angles. A single light flickered in an upstairs window, the only sign of life in the darkness. As I made my way up the crumbling concrete steps, the weight of the pizza bag felt unusually heavy in my hands. Dead leaves crunched beneath my feet, and the porch boards creaked with each step. The doorbell was broken, just a dangling wire where it should have been, so I knocked on the weathered door, paint chips falling away at the impact. The door creaked open on its own, revealing a dimly lit hallway. The musty smell of decay hit me immediately, and I could see vintage wallpaper peeling off the walls in long, curling strips. A single bare bulb buzzed overhead, creating more shadows than light. "Hello?" I called out. "Food delivery." Following the sound of a faint voice, I stepped into what appeared to be the kitchen. Dirty dishes were piled impossibly high in the sink, and dark stains ran down the walls like tear tracks. An emergency exit sign cast an ominous red glow across the room. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but 3 years of delivery work had taught me to ignore such feelings. "Down here!" the voice called from below. I pulled out my phone's flashlight and saw a steep staircase leading to what must be the basement. Rusty tools were scattered across the steps, and water damage had left dark patches on the walls. Every horror movie I'd ever watched flashed through my mind, but I reminded myself that this was real life, not fiction. The basement opened into what appeared to be an old tunnel system, complete with exposed pipes and dripping water. My flashlight beam caught the silhouettes of rats scurrying along the walls. Emergency lights cast everything in a hellish red glow. The tunnels shouldn't exist. This was a residential area, not an industrial zone. I checked my phone. No signal. That's when I saw it. An industrial-sized freezer door, covered in frost, with what looked disturbingly like handprints smeared across its surface. A heavy chain lock hung open, swaying slightly in a draft I couldn't feel. The pizza bag suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I knew I should run, but my feet seemed rooted to the spot. The freezer door led to what could only be described as a meat processing room. Steel tables lined the walls, and rusted hooks hung from the ceiling. Dark stains covered the floor in patterns too deliberate to be random. An industrial fan spun lazily overhead, casting moving shadows that made the whole scene feel alive. And there, arranged neatly on one of the tables, were dozens of delivery bags from various services: DoorDash, Uber Eats, Grubhub. In the corner, a setup of monitors displayed various delivery apps' interfaces. The wall behind them was covered in newspaper clippings about missing persons, all from the past year, all from this area. With trembling hands, I pulled out my phone again and opened my delivery app. The order details were gone. The address didn't exist in my history. The customer's name had vanished. A sound behind me, footsteps on metal stairs. I ran. Through the processing room, past the freezer, down a narrow corridor I hadn't noticed before. An emergency exit sign pointed the way, and I burst through a heavy metal door into the cool night air. I didn't stop running until I reached my car, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. The police found evidence of at least 12 victims in that basement. The tunnel system extended for blocks, connecting to other abandoned properties in the area. They never caught whoever was responsible. The house at 1247 Maple Street was demolished, but the case remains open. Sometimes on quiet nights, I still dream about that final delivery, about the others who weren't as lucky as me, about the voice that called from below. I don't do delivery work anymore. Can't bring myself to open those apps. But sometimes, late at night, I check them anyway. And sometimes, just sometimes, I see orders pop up for 1247 Maple Street, the address that doesn't exist, the house that was demolished. And I wonder about the drivers who accept those orders, hoping they'll be as lucky as I was. That last delivery taught me something. Monsters are real. They don't have fangs or claws. They don't transform under the full moon. They place orders for pizza and wait in the darkness. They prey on the desperation of gig workers trying to make ends meet. They know our need for that last tip of the night might override our instincts for survival. So if you're a delivery driver reading this, trust your gut. Check your addresses carefully. And if you ever get an order for a house that looks abandoned, or if a voice calls you down to a basement, or if something just feels wrong, cancel the order. Take the rating hit. Let your completion rate drop. Some deliveries aren't worth making. Some tips aren't worth your life. Working as a food delivery driver in downtown Seattle wasn't my first choice of careers, but tips in the luxury buildings made it worthwhile. The Infinity Tower stood 60 stories tall, all gleaming glass and polished steel, reflecting the city lights like a massive mirror. That Friday night, I had a delivery to the penthouse, a $300 sushi order that promised a generous tip. The lobby was unusually quiet for 9 p.m. No doorman, no security guard. Just an abandoned coffee cup at the desk and the soft hum of the HVAC system. The marble floors reflected the LED lighting in twisted patterns, making the modern art installations cast strange shadows. A notification pinged on my phone. Customer requests delivery to back service entrance. Following the customer's instructions, I drove around to the service entrance. It looked more like a restaurant loading dock than part of a residential building. All steel doors and industrial efficiency. Steam rose from vents, and a neon sign from the neighboring building cast everything in a sickly red glow. The asphalt was wet despite no rain that day. The service door opened into what appeared to be a commercial kitchen. Rows of stainless steel appliances gleamed under emergency lighting, and professional-grade knives hung on magnetic strips. Everything looked pristine, almost surgical. My footsteps echoed off the tile floors as I called out, "Delivery for Mr. Chen?" A voice directed me through a walk-in freezer, apparently a shortcut to the service elevator. Industrial shelving units lined the walls, frost-covered and eerily empty, except for a few covered trays. Plastic curtains hung in strips from the ceiling, and steel hooks swayed slightly in the artificial breeze. The temperature made me wish I'd worn something warmer than a light jacket. The service elevator looked nothing like the luxury lifts in the main lobby. Its brushed steel walls were scratched, and a fluorescent light flickered overhead. The emergency phone hung off its hook, swaying slightly. I pressed PH for penthouse, but nothing happened. Then I noticed a keycard reader I hadn't seen before, glowing red in the corner. A man's voice crackled through a hidden speaker, instructing me to leave the food in the conference room on the 59th floor. The room was all floor-to-ceiling windows and city views, dominated by a long table covered in scattered papers. A laptop sat open, displaying what looked like security camera feeds. Something felt off about the whole setup. That's when I noticed the glass wall behind the table. It was covered in handwritten equations and newspaper clippings, connected by circles and arrows in red marker. The articles were about food delivery robberies across the city, dozens of them over the past 6 months. Drivers lured to fake addresses, missing persons reports, unsolved cases. In the corner, a sophisticated setup of monitors displayed various delivery app interfaces, not just mine, but all of them. Maps showed pinned locations across the city. Radio equipment hummed softly. This wasn't a conference room, it was a control center. And those security camera feeds weren't from the building. They showed different locations around Seattle, all common delivery spots. I heard the elevator ding behind me and ran for the emergency stairs. The heavy metal door slammed behind me as I took the steps 2 at a time. 59 floors is a long way down, but fear is a powerful motivator. I noticed something dark smeared on the wall. Later, I'd remember it looked like someone else had tried to escape this way before. The stairs ended at the underground parking garage. Emergency lights cast everything in a red glow, and I noticed something I'd missed when parking outside, a row of abandoned delivery vehicles. Different companies, different models, all covered in a layer of dust. Oil stains marked the concrete beneath them, like dark teardrops frozen in time. The police later told me I'd stumbled onto something big. The penthouse was actually a sophisticated operation tracking and targeting delivery drivers across the city. They found evidence linking the group to dozens of robberies and several missing persons cases. The equations on the glass wall? A complex algorithm predicting which drivers would be the easiest targets based on their delivery patterns. I still do delivery work, but things are different now. I check every address twice. I never take orders to service entrances or alternate locations. I don't deliver to buildings I don't know, no matter how much the tip might be. The delivery apps now have warning systems in place, thanks partly to what was discovered in that tower. But sometimes, when I'm driving late at night and get an order from a high-rise building, I think about that conference room on the 59th floor. I think about those monitors tracking drivers like dots on a map. I think about those abandoned delivery vehicles in the garage, their drivers possibly still missing. Most of all, I think about how easy it is to trust a simple delivery request, right up until the moment you realize you're the one being delivered. The scariest part? The police never caught everyone involved. They found the operation, but the masterminds disappeared. Sometimes I see patterns in my delivery requests that seem too perfect to be random. Sometimes I get orders that remind me of that night. And sometimes, just sometimes, I wonder if somewhere in this city, in another luxury tower with a perfect view, someone is still watching dots move across a screen, planning their next delivery. The 24/7 storage facility on the outskirts of Phoenix wasn't my usual delivery spot. In 3 years of food delivery driving, I'd gotten used to apartments, offices, and the occasional construction site. But Storage Solutions Plus stretched out like a maze in the desert. Endless rows of orange doors under the fading Arizona sun. The delivery instructions were specific. Unit 2187, Building F. The security guard barely glanced at my delivery bag before waving me through. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead as I navigated the narrow corridors between storage units, my footsteps echoing off concrete walls. Each identical door had a number, but the sequence made no sense. 2184, 2185, 2190, 2183. Someone had deliberately mixed up the numbers. I noticed the cameras first, dozens of them, more than any storage facility would reasonably need. They weren't the standard security cameras either. These were high-end models, their red recording lights blinking in synchronized patterns. Digital eyes tracking every movement through the maze-like corridors. Some were aimed at specific units. Others covered blind spots that only someone intimately familiar with the layout would know about. The temperature dropped as I entered Building F. Industrial cooling units hummed on the walls, and frost had formed around the edges of several doors. Climate-controlled storage wasn't unusual in the Arizona heat, but this level of cooling seemed excessive. Condensation dripped from the ceiling, creating small puddles that reflected the fluorescent lights like mirrors. Through a small window in one of the units, I caught a glimpse of something that made me stop. Medical equipment. Containers with biohazard symbols. Warning labels in multiple languages. This wasn't someone's extra furniture or seasonal decorations. The frost on the window couldn't completely obscure what looked like specialized storage units, the kind used in laboratories or hospitals. Unit 2187's door was slightly ajar. Instead of the expected storage space, I found myself looking at what appeared to be a modified shipping container. Computer monitors lined one wall, displaying streams of data and what looked like shipping manifests. Server racks hummed in the corner, their blue LEDs creating an eerie glow. The sushi order suddenly felt like a prop in someone else's game. The wall opposite the monitors was covered in maps showing global shipping routes. Red strings connected different locations, and surveillance photos showed various storage facilities around the world. Newspaper clippings in different languages had common themes. Missing medical supplies, black market organ trafficking, unexplained disappearances. My hands started shaking as I realized what I'd stumbled into. A crash from deeper inside the unit made me jump. In a small side room, laboratory equipment lay scattered across steel tables. Broken glass crunched under my feet, and an expensive-looking microscope lay on its side. There were signs of a struggle, recent one, judging by the small drops of still wet liquid on the floor. Behind a movable shelf unit, I discovered why this particular storage unit had been chosen. A service tunnel stretched into darkness, maintenance pipes running along its length. Emergency lights cast just enough illumination to reveal metal grating underfoot and other branches of the tunnel system. The whole storage facility was just a front, a cover for something much bigger. My phone's flashlight revealed another modified container, this one set up like a mobile command center. Tactical gear hung on racks, and radio equipment sat silent on a desk. The surveillance monitors were dark, but sticky notes around them listed delivery service names: DoorDash, Uber Eats, Grubhub. Each note had dates, times, and unit numbers written in precise handwriting. The tunnel led to an underground parking area. Delivery vehicles sat abandoned, not just cars, but also refrigerated vans with pharmaceutical company logos. Crates labeled as surgical equipment were stacked near a loading dock. Everything looked professional, organized, methodical. This wasn't some small-time operation. This was an industrial-scale criminal enterprise. When I finally got the courage to call the police, they found more than just a black market medical supply operation. The storage facility was a hub for a global organ trafficking network. They used delivery drivers to maintain appearances, establishing a pattern of regular traffic to and from the facility. The complex tunnel system connected to a private airfield 3 miles away. These days, delivery apps have new safety features. Drivers can flag suspicious locations, and certain types of industrial or storage facilities require additional verification. But sometimes, when I'm scrolling through available orders late at night, I think about Unit 2187, about the perfectly organized operation hidden behind those orange doors, about how many drivers might have delivered there before me, not all of whom were lucky enough to leave. The investigation is still ongoing. They never caught everyone involved. Sometimes I see news reports about similar operations being discovered in other cities, always with the same level of organization, always with the same cover stories. And sometimes when I drive past storage facilities at night, I watch the security cameras track my movement and wonder, behind which door is another Unit 2187? How many more delivery drivers are unknowingly helping maintain the perfect cover story for something darker beneath the surface?